Have you ever hidden the most important part of yourself from someone you desperately wanted to accept you? Sarah Chin stood frozen at her front door that autumn evening, her hand trembling on the doorknob as she faced a handsome stranger she'd been messaging for 3 weeks. Marcus had the warmest smile she'd ever seen, holding a bouquet of sunflowers because she'd mentioned they reminded her of her late grandmother. But behind Sarah, just 10 feet away in the living room, sat her greatest joy and her deepest fear of rejection, Emma, her 6-year-old daughter with cerebral palsy, watching cartoons in her specialized wheelchair. Sarah had carefully cropped every photo, avoided video calls, and danced around direct questions about her life. She told herself it was because she wanted Marcus to know her first, not her situation. But the truth was far more painful. She was terrified that the moment he discovered she was a single mother to a child with special needs, he would disappear like all the others had. Tonight, she'd planned to tell him over dinner at a quiet restaurant, in a public place where his reaction wouldn't devastate her quite as much. She'd rehearsed the words 100 times, imagined every possible response, prepared herself for the polite excuse and the ghosting that would follow. But fate had other plans. As Sarah opened the door and Marcus's smile brightened, she heard Emma's wheelchair activate behind her, the familiar mechanical whir that was music to Sarah's ears, but might sound like an alarm to man she was falling for. Marcus's eyes shifted past her shoulder, his expression changing from warm anticipation to something Sarah couldn't quite read. Then he asked a question that made her heart stop. "Who's behind you?" This is a story of one mother's desperate gamble for love, and the man whose response would either restore her faith in humanity or shatter what little hope she had left. 6 months earlier, Sarah's life looked nothing like she'd imagined it would at 32. She woke every morning at 5:30 in her modest 2-bedroom apartment in Portland. Not to the gentle sunrise she'd once dreamed of sharing with a partner, but to prepare for the complex routine that came with caring for Emma. Physical therapy exercises before breakfast, medications carefully measured and administered, special dietary considerations that turned every meal into a calculated endeavor. Sarah had been a promising architect before Emma's birth, with a corner office view and projects that made her name known in sustainable design circles. Now she worked remotely as a freelance CAD operator, taking whatever project she could complete during Emma's school hours and after her daughter's 8 o'clock bedtime. Emma's father, Jason, had left when their daughter was 14 months old, right after the diagnosis that changed everything. He'd cried, said he couldn't handle it, promised child support he rarely paid, and vanished into a new life in California with a new girlfriend who didn't come with complications. Sarah had spent 2 years angry, another year grieving, and the past 2 years building a life that worked for her and Emma. They had routines, inside jokes, Friday movie nights where Emma picked increasingly ridiculous animated films. But Sarah was lonely in a way that made her chest ache during the quiet hours after Emma slept. Her friends had slowly drifted away, uncomfortable with the reality of her life or simply too busy with their own growing families. The few times she tried dating had ended in disaster. Men who seemed interested until they learned about Emma, or worse, men who pitted her and treated her like a charity case rather than a woman. Then came the night she almost deleted the dating app for good, her finger hovering over the icon, when Marcus's message appeared. Marcus's first message wasn't like the others she received on the app. He didn't lead with a compliment about her appearance or some generic "hey beautiful" that she'd seen 1,000 times. Instead, he noticed a detail in her profile most people overlooked. A mention of her favorite book, The Overstory by Richard Powers. His message read, "Anyone who loves that book either cares deeply about the planet or has a secret life as a tree. I'm hoping it's both." Sarah had laughed out loud, startling Emma, who'd been coloring at the kitchen table. That laugh felt foreign in her own mouth, like a language she'd forgotten how to speak. They messaged for hours that first night. Sarah curled on her couch after Emma's bedtime, discovering they shared more than just literary taste. Marcus was a landscape architect who specialized in creating accessible public spaces, though Sarah didn't yet understand the significance of that detail. He'd moved to Portland 6 months ago from Boston, leaving behind a failed engagement to a woman who'd wanted him to abandon his passion for public service and join her father's corporate firm. He wrote with self-deprecating humor about his attempts to make friends in a new city, about his elderly neighbor Mrs. Chun who'd adopted him and kept bringing him homemade dumplings, about his rescue dog Copper, who was afraid of his own shadow. Sarah found herself sharing more than she'd intended. Her love of early morning coffee before the world woke up, her secret obsession with terrible reality TV shows, her dreams of one day designing a truly sustainable housing community. But she never mentioned Emma, and every time the conversation drifted toward family or children, she'd redirect with a practiced ease that was becoming second nature. 3 weeks of daily messages turned into hour-long phone calls, which turned into the moment Marcus asked to meet in person, and Sarah said yes before her fear could stop her. The week before their planned first date, Sarah's carefully constructed secret nearly collapsed. Emma's school called on Tuesday afternoon. Her daughter had a seizure during lunch, a complication from her condition that happened occasionally despite medication. Sarah's heart had dropped to her stomach as she listened to the school nurse's calm voice explaining that Emma was stable, conscious, asking for her mom. Sarah abandoned her laptop mid-project, grabbed her keys with shaking hands, and drove to school in a blur of terror and automatic muscle memory. She found Emma in the nurse's office, pale but smiling when she saw her mother, and Sarah held her daughter's small hand while they waited for the neurologist's callback. That evening, after confirming Emma's medication levels were simply off and needed adjustment, after tucking her daughter into bed with extra stories and kisses, Sarah sat in her bathroom and cried with the exhaustion that comes from living in constant low-level fear. She opened her phone to cancel the date with Marcus. It was too risky, too complicated, too unfair to drag someone into this reality. But there was a message from him waiting. Saw the funniest thing today. A dad trying to teach his kid to ride a bike in park. But the dog kept running between them, and everyone kept falling over. The kid was laughing so hard, she didn't even care about the scraped knee. Made me think about how the best moments are usually the messy ones. Something about that message, about his casual acceptance of chaos and imperfection, made Sarah pause. She imagined telling him the truth, imagined his reaction, imagined all the ways it could go wrong. But she also imagined, just for a moment, what it might feel like if it went right. The next morning, she didn't cancel. Instead, she asked her neighbor Teresa, a retired teacher who becomes something of a grandmother figure to Emma, if she could babysit Saturday evening. Saturday arrived with a kind of crisp autumn weather that makes Portland magical, all golden light and leaves crunching underfoot. Sarah spent the afternoon in a state of controlled panic, trying on 7 different outfits, while Emma provided commentary from her bed, where she was resting after a physical therapy session. "That one makes you look like a teacher," Emma said about the navy dress. "That one is too fancy. Are you going to a wedding?" About the cocktail dress Sarah had bought years ago and never worn. Finally, Emma pointed at a burgundy sweater and dark jeans combination. "That one makes you look like you, Mommy. Just prettier." Sarah knelt beside her daughter's bed, overcome with love for this little person who noticed everything, who was wiser than her 6 years should allow. "Baby, I'm going to dinner with a friend tonight. Teresa is going to stay with you." Emma's eyes, so perceptive, studied her mother's face. "A friend like Uncle David?" she asked, referring to Sarah's gay best friend from college who visited monthly. "Or a friend like a boyfriend?" Sarah's breath caught. They'd never had this conversation before. "Maybe like a boyfriend," she admitted. "But just dinner, just to see if we like each other." Emma considered this seriously. Does he know about me? And there it was, the question Sarah had been avoiding in her own mind. She wanted to lie, to say yes, to pretend she hadn't been deliberately hiding the most important part of her life. But she'd never lied to Emma, had always treated her daughter with the honesty she deserved. "Not yet," Sarah said quietly. "But I'll tell him soon. I promise." Emma reached out and patted her mother's hand with the gravity of someone much older. "It's okay, Mommy. Some people get scared, but the good ones don't." How did her 6-year-old daughter understand what Sarah was still learning? Teresa arrived at 6:30 with a bag of Emma's favorite books and her famous snickerdoodle cookies that made the whole apartment smell like cinnamon and comfort. Sarah went through the emergency procedures one more time. Teresa had heard them dozens of times before, but listened patiently, understanding that repetition was how Sarah managed her anxiety. Seizure protocol, medication schedule, allergies. The neurologist's after-hours number programmed into Teresa's phone. "We'll be fine," Teresa assured her, giving Sarah's shoulders a gentle squeeze. "You look beautiful. Go have fun. Let yourself be young for one evening." Sarah wanted to explain that she'd never really gotten to be young, that she'd gone from architecture student to pregnant, to single mother to caregiver, without any of the carefree years in between. But Teresa understood without words, just smiled and practically pushed Sarah toward the door. The original plan had been for Marcus to pick her up at her apartment, but Sarah had suggested meeting at the restaurant instead, claiming she had errands to run nearby. Another lie. Another brick in the wall she was building between her real life and this fragile possibility of romance. She'd chosen a small Italian place in the Pearl District, far enough from her neighborhood that they wouldn't run into anyone who knew Emma. As she drove, Sarah practiced her confession speech. "I have a daughter. She's 6. She has cerebral palsy. She's the most amazing person I know." The word sounded clinical, defensive, like she was apologizing. She tried again. "There's something I need to tell you about my life." Too ominous. "I'm a mom." Too casual, didn't capture the complexity. By the time she pulled into the parking garage, she'd rehearsed 17 different versions and hated them all. Sarah checked her reflection in the rear-view mirror one last time, reapplied her lipstick with shaking hands, and walked toward the restaurant where Marcus waited, where a carefully crafted secret was supposed to finally be revealed on her terms, in her time, in a way she could control. But fate, as it turns out, doesn't care much for our carefully laid plans. Sarah's phone rang just as she reached the restaurant door, Teresa's name flashing on the screen. Panic flooded through her. Was Emma okay? Had something happened? She answered with breathless fear. "Everything's fine," Teresa said quickly, hearing the terror in Sarah's voice. "Emma's perfect. But, sweetie, I'm so sorry. I just realized I left my blood pressure medication at home, and I'm supposed to take it with dinner. I completely forgot. I hate to ask, but could you possibly swing by and drop it off? My daughter can bring it, but she won't be here for an hour." Sarah closed her eyes, relief that Emma was safe, warring with frustration at the timing. She was 10 minutes early for the date, could make it to Teresa's house, and back in 20 minutes if traffic cooperated. "Of course," she said. "I'll be right there." She texted Marcus, running 15 minutes late. "So sorry. Order wine. I'll be there soon." Then she drove faster than she should have through the darkening streets to Teresa's small house, grabbed the medication from the bathroom cabinet where Teresa had described, and headed back toward her own apartment to deliver it. That's when her car made a sound no car should ever make, a grinding, coughing protest followed by the check engine light blazing to life. Sarah managed to pull into a gas station parking lot before the vehicle died completely, and she sat there in the growing darkness, wanting to cry or scream or both. She called Marcus, apologizing profusely, explaining about the car trouble. "Where are you?" he asked immediately. "I'll come get you." No, Sarah insisted. "I'll just get an Uber to the restaurant." But the app showed a 30-minute wait, and Marcus insisted. And somehow Sarah found herself giving him the gas station address while simultaneously texting Teresa to explain the delay. 20 minutes later, Marcus pulled up in a practical Honda with a car seat in the back, a detail Sarah noticed with a strange pang. He got out to help her, even more handsome in person in his photos, wearing a dark blue shirt that made his eyes look almost gray in the parking lot lights. "Not exactly the meet cute I was planning," Sarah joked weakly, and Marcus smiled that warm smile she'd been thinking about for weeks. "Are you kidding? This is way better than a boring restaurant introduction. I get to be the hero who rescues you from automotive disaster." They laughed together, and Sarah felt some of her tension ease. Marcus was kind about the change of plans, suggested they could reschedule dinner, but Sarah insisted she still wanted to go, just needed to drop something off for her babysitter first. The word slipped out before she could stop it, babysitter. She saw Marcus's expression shift slightly, not negative exactly, just surprised, processing. "You have kids?" he asked, carefully neutral. This was it, the moment she should tell him everything. "Yes," Sarah said. "A daughter. Emma. She's 6. She waited for the follow-up questions, prepared for the conversation she'd been rehearsing. But Marcus just nodded, smiled, and said, "I'd love to hear about her sometime." Should we get that medication delivered? The casualness of his acceptance disarmed her so completely that she found herself directing him to her apartment complex before she'd fully thought through what that meant. She'd intended to run up alone, grab Teresa, and come back down. But as Marcus pulled into a visitor parking spot, he said, "I'll walk up with you. Make sure your babysitter knows you're okay after the car trouble." And Sarah, rattled by the evening's chaos and his unexpected kindness, forgot to say no. They walked up the 2 flights to her apartment, Sarah's heart beating faster with each step, and she realized with growing horror that she was about to introduce this man to her daughter completely unprepared, in her home, with no script and no control. Sarah's hand trembled as she unlocked her apartment door, her mind racing through impossible scenarios. Maybe Emma would be in her room. Maybe Teresa would meet them at the door. Maybe she could somehow still maintain the illusion of control over this revelation. But the universe had other plans. As the door swung open, Sarah saw her living room in sharp detail. Emma's therapy equipment folded in the corner, her special wheelchair parked by the couch, her adaptive toys scattered on a rug where Teresa had been playing with her. And there, in perfect view of the doorway, sat Emma herself at the kitchen table, coloring a picture with the intense concentration she brought to everything, her small body supported by the specialized cushions that helped her sit upright. Teresa looked up from where she sat beside Emma, her eyes widening as she saw Marcus behind Sarah. Emma's head turned at the sound of the door, and her face lit up with that brilliant smile that always made Sarah's heart expand. "Mommy, you came back." The mechanical whir of Emma's wheelchair filled the silence as she activated it, beginning to maneuver toward the door. Sarah stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move forward or back, watching Marcus's face of the reaction she'd been dreading for 3 weeks. His eyes had found Emma immediately, taking the wheelchair, the adaptive equipment, the reality of Sarah's life that was suddenly inescapable. This was the moment that always came, the moment when interest turned to pity, when warmth cooled to polite distance, when excuses would start. Sarah felt her chest tighten, preparing for the blow. But Marcus didn't step back. He didn't tense. Instead, he moved slightly forward, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle and directed at Emma, not Sarah. "Hi there. You must be Emma. I've heard you're pretty amazing at picking out outfits." Emma stopped her wheelchair, looking up at the stranger with her characteristic directness. "Who are you?" she asked, no fear, just curiosity. And Sarah watched, her heart in her throat, as Marcus knelt down at Emma's eye level, a detail she didn't register fully in the moment, but would remember later. "I'm Marcus," he said to Emma with the same warm smile he'd given Sarah. No condescension, no pity, just genuine engagement. "I'm a friend of your mom's. We were supposed to have dinner tonight, but my car had to rescue her car instead." Emma giggled at this. The sound like bells. Cars can't rescue cars. That's silly. "You're absolutely right," Marcus agreed seriously. "I rescued your mom. The car was just my accomplice." He glanced up at Sarah then, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Not discomfort or pity, but a question, asking permission to continue this interaction. Sarah found herself nodding slightly, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Emma, never one to be shy, launched into an explanation of the picture she'd been coloring. An elaborate scene of a princess riding a dinosaur. "Most princesses ride horses," she explained to Marcus, "but that's boring. Dinosaurs are way cooler, and they can eat the bad guys." Marcus studied the picture with genuine interest. "That's brilliant tactical thinking. Plus, a dinosaur will be much faster than a horse." "That's what I said." Emma exclaimed, delighted to find someone who understood. Sarah watched this exchange in a state of shock suspension, her carefully prepared speeches forgotten, all her defenses unnecessary. Teresa caught her eye and smiled knowingly, beginning to gather her things. Marcus noticed and stood up. "You must be the babysitter who needs her medication. I'm sorry we kept you waiting." "Teresa," she introduced herself, shaking his hand with a firm grip and an assessing look that Sarah recognized. Teresa had appointed herself Emma's honorary grandmother and took the role seriously. "And you're the reason Sarah has been smiling at her phone for weeks." Sarah wanted to die of embarrassment, but Marcus just laughed. "I hope so. She's been the reason I've been distracted at work." After Teresa left with her medication, and a meaningful look at Sarah, an awkward silence fell. Sarah waited for the excuses, the polite exit, but Marcus looked at his watch and said, "Well, our dinner reservation was for 7:30. It's now 8:15. I'm guessing you probably need to stay here tonight." Sarah nodded, finding her voice at last. "I'm so sorry. This wasn't how I planned." "Stop apologizing," Marcus interrupted gently. "Nothing about tonight has gone according to plan, and it's been perfect anyway." He turned to Emma. "What do you think? Should I go pick up some pizza and come back? Your mom and I were supposed to have dinner, and I'm really hungry. Plus, I want to hear more about this dinosaur riding princess. Does she have a name?" Emma's eyes went wide with excitement. "Can we, Mommy? Please." Sarah felt tears prickling behind her eyes, overwhelmed by the kindness of this gesture, terrified it was too good to be true, unable to say no to her daughter's hopeful face. "Are you sure?" she asked Marcus. "I've never been more sure of anything," he said, and something in his voice made her believe him. An hour later, Sarah found herself sitting cross-legged on her living room floor, eating pizza from paper plates, while Emma regaled Marcus with elaborate stories about every stuffed animal in her collection. Marcus listened with genuine attention, asked thoughtful questions, and when Emma's energy began to flag around 9 o'clock, he instinctively seemed to know it was time to go. "I think a princess artist needs a rest," he said. "Big day of dinosaur training tomorrow." Sarah carried Emma through her bedtime routine, helping her into pajamas, brushing her teeth at the specially lowered sink, reading 2 chapters of their current book. When she came back to the living room, she expected Marcus to be hovering by the door, ready to escape. Instead, he cleaned up the pizza boxes and was looking at the photos on her bookshelf, pictures of Emma at various stages, as a baby at different therapy milestones, smiling that megawatt smile that lit up every frame. "She's incredible," Marcus said when he heard Sarah behind him. "You both are." Sarah didn't know how to respond, so she asked a question that had been burning in her chest all evening. "Why aren't you running?" Marcus turned to face her fully, his expression serious now. "Can I be completely honest?" Sarah braced herself, nodded. "When I saw Emma tonight, my first thought wasn't about her disability. It was about how much she looks like you when she smiles." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "My younger brother has Down syndrome. He's 28 now, living in a group home in Boston, thriving. But growing up, I watched my parents navigate a world that wasn't built for him. I saw the looks people gave them. I watched my mother's friends disappear because playdates were too complicated. I learned really young that disability doesn't diminish a person, but it reveals everyone else's character pretty quickly." Sarah felt something shift in her chest, a defensive wall she'd been holding up beginning to crack. "You never mentioned your brother in our messages." "You never mentioned Emma," Marcus pointed out gently, without accusation. "I figured you had your reasons. Everyone's got parts of their life they protect until they trust someone enough to share." He moved closer, not touching her, just close enough that she could see the sincerity in his eyes. "For what it's worth, I understand why you didn't tell me. I've watched too many people treat my brother like he's less than human to judge anyone for being protective. But Sarah, I need you to know something. Emma isn't a complication or an obstacle. She's part of who you are, and from what I've seen tonight, she's the best part." The tears Sarah had been fighting all evening finally spilled over. She tried to wipe them away quickly, embarrassed, but Marcus caught her hand gently. "It's okay to cry. This has been a hell of a night." Sarah laughed through her tears. "This was supposed to be a nice dinner where I told you about her in a controlled way, and instead you got ambushed in my living room and ended up eating pizza on the floor." "Best first date I've ever had," Marcus said, and the way he said it made her believe him. Over the next few weeks, Marcus proved with consistent actions what he'd promised in words. He didn't ghost. He didn't make excuses. He texted Sarah every morning with silly memes that made her laugh over her coffee, called her most evenings after Emma's bedtime just to hear about her day. Their second date was a proper dinner at the Italian restaurant they'd originally planned, and Sarah found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years, talking about her dreams of returning to architecture full-time, her frustrations with the medical system, her hopes for Emma's future. Marcus listened without trying to fix everything, asked thoughtful questions, shared his own challenges adapting to a new city, and building a business from scratch. Their third date, Marcus suggested something unexpected. A Saturday afternoon at the accessible playground he'd helped design across town, inviting both Sarah and Emma. Sarah's first instinct was to say no, to keep these parts of her life separate a little longer. But Emma had been asking about Mommy's friend Marcus constantly, and Sarah realized she was the one creating barriers that didn't need to exist. The afternoon was a revelation. Marcus had designed the playground with Emma's generation in mind. Ramps instead of stairs, sensory elements at various heights, equipment that children with different abilities could use together. He pushed Emma on an adaptive swing, helped her navigate a wheelchair-accessible treehouse, and explained to Sarah the philosophy behind each design choice. "Every kid deserves to play," he said, watching Emma's delighted face. "Accessibility isn't about special treatment. It's about designing a world that works for everyone from the start." Sarah watched him with her daughter, saw how naturally he engaged with Emma, how he never treated her differently or talked down to her, and something protective and scared in her began to soften. That evening, after Marcus had left and Emma was in bed, Sarah received a text from him. "Thank you for trusting me with today. I know it wasn't easy." And she realized he was right. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Of course, not everything was perfect. 6 weeks into dating Marcus, Sarah's ex-husband Jason resurfaced with his usual terrible timing. He called on a Tuesday afternoon, his voice carrying that familiar mixture of guilt and entitlement that made Sarah's jaw clench. "I'm going to be in Portland next week for work. I'd like to see Emma." Sarah's first instinct was to say no, to protect her daughter from a man who'd abandoned her. But her therapist's voice echoed in her head. "Emma has a right to know her father, even if he's disappointed you. One supervised visit." Sarah agreed coldly. 2 hours. I'll be there the whole time. When she told Marcus about it that evening, she expected advice, maybe judgment about Jason's absence. Instead, Marcus asked, "How are you feeling about it?" The question surprised her. Angry, protective, worried he'll disappoint her again. "That's fair," Marcus said. "Do you want company when he visits? I could wait at a coffee shop nearby, be on standby if you need backup." The offer made Sarah's eyes sting with grateful tears. This was the difference. Jason had run from difficulty, but Marcus ran toward her support. The visit with Jason was as awkward as Sarah feared. He showed up with an expensive doll that Emma politely thanked him for, but set aside in favor of showing him her dinosaur drawings. He asked surface-level questions, looked uncomfortable when Emma struggled with her coordination, checked his phone too often. After 90 minutes, Emma was tired and Jason looked relieved when Sarah said it was time to go. Later, after Emma was asleep, Sarah called Marcus and cried angry tears about how little Jason knew his own daughter, how he'd asked if she was getting better, as if cerebral palsy was something Emma could cure with enough effort. Marcus listened, validated her anger, reminded her that she was giving Emma everything she needed. "Emma knows who shows up," he said. "That's you. Every single day, that's you." 3 months into their relationship, Sarah realized she was in love with Marcus. The realization hit her during a completely ordinary moment. She was making dinner while Emma did homework at the kitchen table, and Marcus called with a question about whether they preferred mushrooms on their pizza for Friday movie night. Friday movie night had become a routine. Marcus brought pizza. Emma picked increasingly ridiculous animated films, and the three of them laughed together on Sarah's worn couch. It was domestic and simple and perfect, and the fact that Marcus referred to it as our Friday tradition made Sarah's heart expand until it hurt. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah texted Marcus, "I need to tell you something." He called immediately, concern in his voice. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Sarah said, surprised by her own calm. "I just realized I'm in love with you, and I thought you should know." Silence on the other end, long enough that Sarah started to panic. Then, "Can I come over?" "Now." "It's 10:30. Now. Please." 20 minutes later, Marcus stood at her door, slightly breathless from taking the stairs too fast. "I've been in love with you since the night you opened this door and I met Emma," he said without preamble. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to scare you. Didn't want you to think I was moving too fast. But Sarah, I love you. I love Emma. I love the life you've built and the mother you are and the way you put 17 different creamers in your coffee. Sarah laughed, crying again, and pulled him inside. They stood in her small entryway, holding each other, and Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope for a future that included partnership, that didn't require her to carry everything alone. I'm terrified, she admitted into his shoulder. I haven't let anyone this close since Jason left. I'm terrified, too, Marcus confessed. What if I mess this up? What if I'm not enough for what you and Emma need? You show up, Sarah said, pulling back to look at him. That's more than enough. 6 months in, they hit their first real rough patch. Emma had a difficult week. A growth spurt that threw off her medication balance, leading to breakthrough seizures that terrified Sarah and exhausted Emma. Sarah missed 3 days of work, spent 2 nights sleeping on a cot in Emma's hospital room for observation, and came home running on caffeine and terror. Marcus tried to help, bringing food, offering to stay with Emma so Sarah could shower or rest. But Sarah, overwhelmed and reverting to old patterns, shut him out. I've got it handled, she kept saying, her voice tight with stress she wouldn't share. After the 4th time she brushed off his offers, Marcus sat down across from her at the kitchen table and said gently, Stop pushing me away. I'm not. You are, he interrupted. And I get it. You've been handling everything alone for so long that it's habit. But Sarah, I'm not Jason. I'm not going to run when things get hard. But I also can't help if you won't let me in. Sarah wanted to argue, to insist she was fine, but exhaustion made her defenses crumble. I don't know how to need someone, she admitted, her voice breaking. Every time I've needed someone, they've left. I can't survive you leaving. Emma can't survive it. Marcus reached across the table and took her hands. I'm not leaving. Not when Emma has seizures. Not when you're stressed. Not when things are scary. But you have to let me prove that. You have to give me the chance to show up. That night, for the first time since Jason left, Sarah let someone else carry part of her burden. She let Marcus stay while Emma slept. Let him hold her while she cried out years of accumulated stress and fear. Let him make her tea and rub her shoulders and just be present with her pain. It didn't fix everything. Emma's seizures still needed managing. The fear didn't disappear. But Sarah learned that sharing the weight didn't make her weak. It just made the load more bearable. 9 months into dating, Marcus asked Sarah and Emma to move in with him. The question came on an ordinary Sunday morning. They'd stayed at his house the night before, a rare sleepover that Marcus had carefully prepared for, installing grab bars in his guest bathroom and rearranging furniture to ensure Emma's wheelchair could navigate easily. Sarah was making pancakes in his kitchen while Marcus helped Emma set the table, and he said, casually enough that she almost missed it, You know, you two should just live here. This house is too big for one person, and a neurotic dog anyway. Sarah dropped the spatula. What? Marcus came around the kitchen island. Flowers somehow in his hair from Emma's help with breakfast. Move in with me. Officially. I know it's fast by some standards, but Sarah, you're here most weekends anyway. Emma's clothes are in my guest room closet. Your coffee creamer has a permanent spot in my fridge. I love waking up to you too. I love Emma's laugh being the first thing I hear in the morning. I love this. He gestured to the domestic chaos of their morning. Emma at the table narrating an elaborate story to Copper the dog. Pancake batter on the counter. Sunlight streaming through windows. I love this life we're building. Make it official. Move in with me. Sarah's first instinct was to list all the reasons it was too soon, too risky, too much change for Emma. But then Emma's voice piped up from the table. Can we, Mommy? Marcus has a backyard in Copper, and that bathroom with the special bars I can use. Sarah looked at her daughter's hopeful face, at Marcus's patient one, at the life they'd been carefully constructing for 9 months. She thought about her cramped apartment, about always packing bags for weekends at Marcus's place, about the way Emma had started calling this house home, without anyone teaching her to. On one condition, Sarah said. Marcus raised his eyebrows. What's that? We pay half the mortgage. I won't move in as your dependent. We're partners or it doesn't work. Marcus's smile could have lit the whole city. Partners. I love that. Yes. Absolutely yes. Moving in together revealed all the small intimacies and adjustments that come with merging lives. Marcus learned that Sarah needed 20 minutes of silent coffee time every morning before she could handle conversation. Sarah discovered that Marcus was incapable of loading the dishwasher correctly and had to accept this flaw. Emma appointed herself decorator and insisted on hanging her artwork throughout the house, which Marcus encouraged enthusiastically. But the transition also meant navigating harder conversations. Sarah's parents, who'd been sporadically involved in Emma's life, had opinions about her moving in with a man she'd known less than a year. What if it doesn't work out? Her mother worried over the phone. What message does that send to Emma about stability? Sarah, who'd been expecting this reaction, took a breath before responding. The message it sends is that good, reliable partners exist. That asking for help is strong, not weak. That families come in different forms. And Mom, if it doesn't work out, which I don't believe it will, Emma will have seen me try, and try with someone who treats us both with respect and love. That's still a better lesson than staying alone out of fear. Her mother went quiet, then admitted, "You sound happy." "I haven't heard you sound as happy since before Emma was born." "I am happy," Sarah said, and meant it completely. Marcus had his own adjustments. His mother came to visit from Boston, bringing his brother Michael along. Sarah was terrified of this meeting, of being judged by the people whose opinion Marcus valued most. But Michael, with his characteristic directness, announced within 5 minutes of meeting Emma that she was way cooler than Marcus's last girlfriend, and could they please play with Coppa together? Marcus's mother pulled Sarah aside while the kids played in the backyard. "Thank you," she said quietly. Sarah blinked in confusion. "For what?" "For trusting my son with something precious. I know what it costs you. I know the fear. But you're giving him something I've always wanted for him. A family of his own, a chance to be the man I raised him to be." A year into living together, Sarah received news that would test everything they'd built. Her former architecture firm, the one she'd left when Emma was born, reached out with an opportunity, a major sustainable housing project that aligned perfectly with her skills and passions. The catch? It would require significant travel over 6 months, meetings in Seattle and San Francisco, long hours. Sarah's first instinct was to decline without even mentioning it to Marcus. The logistics alone seemed impossible. Who would handle Emma's therapy appointments, school meetings, medical needs? But that night, as they sat on the back porch after Emma's bedtime, Marcus noticed her distraction. What's going on in that brilliant mind? Sarah told him about the offer, about the project that represented everything she'd once dreamed of professionally, about why she'd already mentally declined. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Take it?" "What?" "No, I can't possibly." "Yes, you can," Marcus interrupted. "Sarah, you've put your career on hold for 6 years. Emma's in a good place right now. I work from home half the week. We can make this work. But her therapy schedule, her doctor appointments, I know her schedule," Marcus said gently. "I bear parent too for the past year. Not legally, not biologically, but in every way that matters. Let me step up. Let me be the one who handles things while you chase this dream." Sarah felt tears starting. What if something happens while I'm gone? What if she has a seizure and I'm not there? "Then I'll handle it," Marcus said, "the same way you would. Sarah, you're allowed to have a career. You're allowed to want more than just being Emma's caretaker. You're an incredible mother and an incredible architect. Let yourself be both." The conversation continued over the next few days, working through logistics and fears. They created backup plans for the backup plans, ensured Sarah would be home every weekend, set up systems for communication. And slowly, Sarah allowed herself to believe it might be possible. The first time Sarah left for a week in Seattle, Emma cried at the airport. Sarah nearly canceled everything right there, her heart breaking at her daughter's tears. But Marcus knelt down at Emma's level and said, "Remember what we talked about? Mommy's going to build houses that help the earth. And we're going to video call her every single night before bed. We're going to be her support team here at home." Emma sniffled, then nodded bravely. "Okay, But she has to bring me a snow globe. From every city. Sarah laughed through her own tears, promised snow globes, and forced herself to walk through security. That week was harder than any work challenge. Sarah threw herself into meetings and design sessions, but her mind was partially always with Emma, wondering if she'd remember her medication, if she'd had a good day at school. The video calls were both a blessing and torture. Seeing Emma's face but not being able to hug her, hearing about her day but not being there to live it. But Marcus sent photo updates throughout each day. Emma and Copper play in the yard, Emma doing homework at the kitchen table, Emma laughing at something on TV. And slowly, Sarah began to believe her daughter would be okay without her constant presence. The project was exhilarating. Sarah's ideas about adaptive, sustainable design were taken seriously, implemented, refined. She remembered this version of herself. Confident, creative, professionally fulfilled. When she came home that Friday night, Emma launched herself into Sarah's arms with such force, she nearly toppled the wheelchair, and Sarah held her daughter and breathed in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo, overwhelmed with love and relief. "Did you bring my snow globe?" Emma demanded, and Sarah laughed. "Obviously. I would never break a promise to you." That night, after Emma was asleep, Marcus asked Sarah how she was really doing. Guilty, she admitted. Excited, terrified, grateful, all of it at once. "That sound about right," Marcus said, and held her while she processed the complex emotions of being a working mother to a child with extra needs. 3 months into the project, during one of Sarah's Seattle weeks, she got the call every parent fears. Marcus's voice was calm but urgent. "Emma had a seizure at school. A bad one. We're in the ER. She's stable, but they want to keep her overnight for observation." Sarah's world tilted sideways. She was 3 hours away by plane, useless, unable to protect her daughter when she needed her most. "I'm coming home. Now. I'll get the next flight." "Sarah, breathe," Marcus interrupted gently. "Emma's okay. Scared, but okay. She's asking for you, but she understands you can't teleport here. I'm with her. She's not alone." Sarah wanted to argue, to insist, but a nurse's voice in the background caught her attention. "Mr. Chen, Emma's asking if you can read the next chapter of her book." Mr. Chen. The hospital staff assumed Marcus was Emma's father, and Emma wasn't correcting them because, in every way that mattered, he was. Sarah made it home by midnight. She walked into the hospital room to find Emma asleep, Marcus dozing in the chair beside her bed, one hand resting protectively near her daughter's arm. He woke when she entered, relief crossing his face. "Hey, she's okay." They adjusted her medication. Neuro thinks it was just a breakthrough from stress. There's a new kid in her class who's been teasing her. Rage and helplessness warred in Sarah's chest. "Someone's teasing her? Why didn't she tell me?" "She didn't want you to worry while you were working," Marcus said gently. "I only found out because her teacher called me this afternoon." Sarah sank into the other chair, tears streaming down her face. "I should have been here. I should have known." "Stop," Marcus said, not unkindly. "You're a great mother. Being a great mother doesn't mean being omnipresent or knowing everything. It means Emma has a support system, people who love her, safety nets when she falls. She has all of that." The incident sparked a conversation that Sarah had been avoiding for months. A few days later, after Emma was home and stable, Sarah sat Marcus down with a serious expression. "I need to talk to you about something legal." Marcus's face showed concern. "Okay." Sarah took a breath. "If something happened to me, an accident, an illness, anything, you have no legal rights to Emma. You've been her parent in every meaningful way for almost 2 years now. But legally, you're a stranger. If I ended up in a hospital, you couldn't make medical decisions for her. If something worse happened." She couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus was quiet, processing. "What are you asking?" "I want you to adopt Emma," Sarah said, the words coming out in a rush. "I want to make this official. I want you to be her father legally, not just in our hearts. I know it's a huge ask, and there's no pressure, but I need to know that if something happened to me, Emma would have you. That she wouldn't end up with my parents who love her but don't really understand her, or worse, with Jason who abandoned her." I need to know she'd be safe with you." Tears were streaming down Marcus's face now. "Yes," he said immediately. "God, yes. I wanted to ask, but didn't know if I had the right. Sarah, I love that little girl like she's my own. I would be honored, more than honored, to be her father officially." The process wasn't simple. It required Jason's consent or a termination of his parental rights, background checks, home studies, mountains of paperwork. Jason, predictably, fought at first, not because he wanted to parent Emma, but because his ego was bruised. But faced with the choice of stepping up or stepping aside, he ultimately signed the papers, admitting in a rare moment of honesty that Emma deserved better than he could give. 8 months later, they stood in a courtroom while a judge made it official. Emma wore her favorite purple dress and her biggest smile. The adoption changed something fundamental in their family dynamic. Made official what had been emotionally true for years. Emma started calling Marcus Daddy, without prompting, naturally, as if the word had been waiting for permission. The first time it happened, she called out, "Daddy, can you help me with this?" Marcus's eyes filled with tears, and he had to excuse himself to the bathroom to compose himself. Sarah found him there, crying happy tears, and held him while he processed the enormity of becoming a father not through biology but through choice and love. That summer, they decided to make it completely official in every way. Marcus proposed to Sarah on an ordinary Tuesday evening after Emma's bedtime. No grand gesture, no public spectacle, just the two of them on their back porch with wine and the comfortable intimacy of two people who'd built a life together. "I know we're already a family," Marcus said, holding a simple, beautiful ring. "But I want to make it permanent in every possible way. Marry me. Let me be your husband officially, Emma's father officially, your partner in every legal and emotional sense." Sarah said yes before he'd finished the question. They planned a small wedding for fall, just close family and friends, with Emma as the maid of honor. Emma took her role seriously, helping pick flowers and cake flavors, insisting on a playlist that included her favorite Disney songs alongside the traditional wedding music. Sarah's parents flew in from Arizona, and if her mother had reservations about the speed of the relationship, she kept them to herself, clearly seeing how happy Sarah was, how stable Emma was, how genuine Marcus's commitment was to both of them. Marcus's family came from Boston, his mother, his brother Michael, his father who Sarah was meeting for the first time. Michael and Emma had become fast friends over video calls, and seeing them together at the wedding. Two kids who society often labeled as different, but who simply saw each other as people, made Sarah cry happy tears into her champagne. The wedding was perfect in its imperfect simplicity. Emma's wheelchair got a flat tire right before the ceremony, which Marcus fixed with the ease of someone who'd handled 100 small emergencies. Sarah's bouquet fell apart because Emma had improved it with additional flowers of mourning of. The cake was slightly crooked. And none of it mattered because when Sarah walked down the aisle, Emma wheeling beside her, both of them making their way toward Marcus, the look on his face was everything. They'd written their own vows. Marcus spoke first, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Sarah, 2 years ago you opened your door and changed my life. You were terrified I'd run, but you let me stay. You taught me that family isn't about biology or perfection. It's about showing up every single day for the people you love. You show up for Emma with a fierceness that takes my breath away. And you've let me show up for both of you, which is the greatest gift anyone's ever given me. I promise to keep showing up in the hard moments and the easy ones. When Emma has seizures and when she hits milestones, when you're stressed about work and when you're celebrating successes. I promise to be your partner, your support, your soft place to land. I promise to be Emma's father in every way that matters. I choose you. I choose this family. Today and every day." Sarah was crying before she even started her own vows. "Marcus, I spent 6 years building walls to protect myself and Emma from disappointment. You climbed over every single one of those walls with patience and kindness and stupid jokes that made me laugh when I wanted to cry. You've shown me that asking for help isn't weakness. It's wisdom. That letting someone love you and your child isn't a risk. It's a gift. You've given Emma a father who sees her completely. Not her disability, not her limitations, just her brilliant, funny, incredible self. And you've given me a partner who shares the weight instead of adding to it. I promise to keep letting you in, even when I'm scared. Their honeymoon was a weekend at the coast with Emma in tow, because neither of them wanted to be away from her, and because Emma had strong opinions about wanting to see the ocean. They rented an accessible beach house, spent 3 days building sandcastles with adaptive tools Marcus had researched, flying kites that Emma could hold from her wheelchair, watching sunsets that painted the sky in colors Emma insisted on trying to recreate in her art later. On their last evening, after Emma was asleep, Sarah and Marcus sat on the deck listening to the waves. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked quietly. "Taking on so much, so young in your life? You're 35. You could have had a simpler path, an easier family." Marcus turned to look at her with such genuine confusion that Sarah almost laughed. "Regret loving you? Regret being Emma's father? Sarah, this is a life I choose. Not despite the complexity, but including it, every part of it." He laced his fingers through hers. Easy isn't the same as good. Simple isn't the same as fulfilling. This life, with you, with Emma, with therapy appointments and seizure protocols and adaptive equipment and all of it, this is a life that makes me wake up grateful every single morning. That night, Sarah let herself fully believe what she'd been slowly learning for 3 years, that she deserved this love, that Emma deserved this father, that their family, unconventional and complicated and absolutely perfect, was exactly what was supposed to be. Back home, they settled into married life with the ease of people who'd already been living as a family for years. The only real change was the legal paperwork that now protected them all, and a deep sense of permanence that came of vows spoken and promises made official. Emma started 2nd grade that fall, and when her teacher asked the class to draw their families, Emma drew 3 people, her mom, and her dad, with Cop of the dog supervising and a note that said, "My family is the best because we choose each other every day." Life wasn't perfect. It never is. Emma had setbacks and medical scares. Sarah had stressful work deadlines that kept her up at night. Marcus's business had tough months financially. They argued sometimes about parenting decisions and household responsibilities, and whose turn it was to clean up after Coppa's latest destruction of a throw pillow. But they'd built something solid enough to weather the storms. When Emma was 8, she asked a question that Sarah had been dreading. They were doing her nighttime routine when Emma said, out of nowhere, "Why did my first daddy leave?" Sarah's heart clenched. They'd talked about Jason in age-appropriate ways before, but never this directly. "That's a big question, sweetheart. What made you think about it?" Emma was quiet for a moment, focused on her toothbrush. Finally, "A kid at school said her dad left because he didn't want a kid. I told her that's not why my daddy left. But then I thought, maybe it was." Sarah sat down on the bathroom floor at Emma's eye level. "Your biological father left because he was scared and he didn't know how to handle his fear. It wasn't about you being you. It was about him not being brave enough to stay. And baby, that's his loss. Because you are the most incredible person I know, and he's missing out on knowing you." "But Marcus isn't scared," Emma observed. "No," Sarah agreed. "Marcus chose to be brave. He chose to love you and show up for you every single day. That's what makes someone a real parent, not biology, but choice and presence." Emma processed this, then asked with 8-year-old practicality, "So I have a dad who shares my DNA but doesn't love me, and a dad who doesn't share my DNA but does love me?" "That's exactly right," Sarah confirmed. "And which one matters more, do you think?" Emma smiled. "The one who reads me bedtime stories and helps me with my homework and makes funny voices for all my stuffed animals. Obviously." When Emma turned 10, they faced their biggest challenge yet. Emma needed a complex surgery to address issues with her hip development, a common complication of cerebral palsy that they'd been monitoring for years. The surgery would require a 6-week recovery, intensive rehabilitation, significant pain management, and uncertainty about the outcome. Sarah wanted to cancel everything, her work projects, her commitments, her entire life, to focus solely on Emma's care. But Marcus sat her down and reminded her gently that she didn't have to do this alone anymore. They created a plan together. Marcus would take leave from his business for the surgery and initial recovery. Sarah would work reduced hours from home. They'd bring in additional help for the intensive physical therapy Emma would need. Emma's medical team was comprehensive and excellent, and most importantly, they'd approach as a family together, sharing the weight. The surgery day was one of the longest of Sarah's life. She and Marcus sat in the surgical waiting room for 7 hours, holding hands, drinking terrible coffee, trying not to imagine complications. When the surgeon finally came out to tell them everything had gone well, Sarah collapsed against Marcus and cried with relief. The recovery was brutal. Emma was in pain, frustrated by her limitations, angry about missing school and activities. There were days she screamed at both of them, days she cried inconsolably, days she regressed behaviors they hadn't seen in years. Sarah and Marcus took turns being the strong one, the patient one, the one who could still find humor when everything felt heavy. 6 weeks in, Emma took her first steps with her new walker, shaky, careful, but more stable than she'd ever been before. The whole family cried, including Copper, who seemed to sense something momentous was happening. And slowly, painfully, they came through the other side of the crisis stronger and more bonded than before. By the time Emma was 12, their life had found a rhythm that worked. Emma was thriving in middle school, participating in adaptive sports, making friends, developing her art skills with the intensity she brought to everything. Sarah had been promoted to senior designer at her firm, leading projects that made her proud, balancing work and motherhood with the support of a true partner. Marcus's landscape architecture business had grown to include a team of 5, and he was getting recognition for his accessible design work. They bought a larger house to accommodate Emma's growing independence and mobility needs, with a first-floor bedroom suite designed for aging in place as Emma grew. But more than external successes, they'd built something internal, a family culture of honesty, mutual support, and fierce love. Emma had learned from them that disability doesn't define worth, that asking for help is strength, that family is something you build through daily choice and commitment. One evening, Sarah found a school assignment Emma had completed, an essay titled My Hero. She expected it to be about a historical figure or celebrity. Instead, Emma had written about Marcus, about how he'd chosen to be her father when he didn't have to, about how he'd taught her that real love is shown through consistent presence and patience. Sarah sat on Emma's bed and cried while her daughter, now almost as tall as she was, patted her shoulder and said, "Why are you crying? It's all true." That night, Sarah showed Marcus the essay. He read it silently, tears streaming down his face, and when he finished, he said, "How did I get so lucky to have this family, this life, these 2 incredible women?" "We chose each other," Sarah reminded him, echoing the words that had become their family motto. "Every day we choose this." And it was true. Not every day was easy. Not every moment was perfect. But every single day, they chose each other, chose to show up, chose to do the hard work of being a family. Years later, when Emma was preparing to graduate high school, an achievement that some doctors had once suggested might be impossible, Sarah reflected on a night that changed everything. That autumn evening when she'd opened her door to Marcus, terrified and desperate, hiding her greatest treasure and her deepest vulnerability. She thought about how close she'd come to canceling that date, to staying safe in her isolation, to never letting anyone see the full truth of her life. If the car hadn't broken down, if Teresa hadn't forgotten her medication, if the universe hadn't conspired to bring Marcus to her apartment that night, would she have found the courage to let him in? Or would she have kept him at arm's length until he eventually gave up and moved on? She'd never know, and it didn't matter. What mattered was that when the moment came, when Marcus had asked who's behind you, and Emma had wheeled into view, Sarah had stood paralyzed waiting for rejection, and instead had found acceptance beyond anything she'd imagined possible. Marcus hadn't just accepted Emma. He'd embraced her, loved her, chosen her, become her father in every way that mattered. He'd shown Sarah that the right person doesn't see a child with special needs as an obstacle to overcome, but as a whole person deserving of love and respect and normalcy. Emma's high school graduation was a celebration not just of her academic achievements, but of every milestone she'd fought for. Sarah watched her daughter wheel across the stage to receive her diploma, watched Marcus cheer louder than anyone in the crowd, watched Emma's smile light up the entire auditorium. And Sarah thought, this is what love looks like. Not the easy kind that comes when everything's perfect, but the fierce, committed, daily choice kind that weathers storms and celebrates victories and shows up regardless of circumstances. Later, at Emma's graduation party in their backyard, surrounded by friends and family who'd supported them through the years, Sarah found a quiet moment alone with Marcus. "Remember our first date?" she asked. Marcus laughed. "The one where your car died, and I ended up eating pizza on your living room floor? Hard to forget." "I was so scared that night," Sarah admitted. "So sure you'd run the second you saw Emma. I'd built up so many walls to protect us both from that rejection. And I was so grateful fate intervened," Marcus said. "If we had that restaurant dinner, if you'd told me about Emma in that controlled, careful way you planned, I might never gotten to see what I saw that night. You as a mother, Emma as herself, the real life you were protecting. I fell in love with all of it at once." Sarah leaned into him, watching Emma across the yard laughing with her friends. "Thank you," she said, "for every day, for every choice, for being exactly who you are." "Thank you for opening the door," Marcus replied, "for letting me in, for trusting me with your heart and Emma's, for building this life with me." They stood together in comfortable silence, and Sarah realized this was the gift Marcus had given her. Not just partnership in parenting, not just romantic love, but a profound security of knowing she'd never have to carry everything alone again. The fear that defined her life for so many years. The fear being too much, of Emma being too much, of their needs driving everyone away, had transformed into confidence and peace. To anyone considering giving up on love because your life is complicated, because you come with baggage or responsibilities or challenges, Sarah's story is proof that the right person doesn't see those things as deal breakers. They see them as part of the package they're choosing to love. Don't hide your truth, hoping someone will accept the edited version of your life. Find someone who loves the whole story, complications included. Today, Emma is pursuing a degree in adaptive technology design, inspired by Marcus's work and determined to create solutions for people with disabilities. Sarah runs her own sustainable architecture firm specializing in accessible housing. Marcus continues his landscape work and teaches courses on universal design at the local university. And together, they build a family that proves love isn't about biology or perfection. It's about choice, commitment, and showing up every single day. Sarah sometimes thinks about that moment at the door, the question that made her heart stop. Who's behind you? At the time, it felt like exposure, like all her carefully constructed walls crashing down. Now she understands it was an invitation. Marcus asking to see all of her life, all of her love. And when she'd let him in, when she'd stopped hiding and started trusting, she found something she'd stopped believing existed. A partner who didn't just accept her complicated reality, but embraced it completely. To every single parent out there afraid to date, because you think your children make you less desirable, to every person who believes their challenges or responsibilities make them unlovable, you are wrong. The right person won't see your life as a burden. They'll see it as an opportunity to build something beautiful together. Don't settle for someone who tolerates your reality. Wait for someone who celebrates it, who loves your children as their own, who shows up for the hard stuff and the good stuff with equal commitment. They're out there. Marcus found Sarah. Sarah found Marcus. And together, they created a love story that proves family isn't about perfection. It's about presence, patience, and choosing each other every single day. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember to watch our other videos about finding love, building families, and creating the life you deserve, no matter what challenges you face. Because everyone deserves a love story like Sarah and Marcus's, one built on truth, acceptance, and a daily choice to show up for each other, no matter what.